You've heard pieces being played that you don't know the next note, right? You just hear somebody playing it, you think, that's really nice. Say they would hit a wrong note, would you know it? And the answer is yes, it doesn't sound right. I believe you see that throughout the universe. You see it down to the smallest molecule. Everything is vibrating in harmony. And so when a person is not in harmony with nature, they don't act in harmony with their surroundings for whatever reason.
Ryan, so good to have you back, man.
Thank you, Artie.
How's your day going?
Beautiful day. I took a walk earlier, and it makes you realize how rich you actually are. Maybe not in money, but you can enjoy so many things that are free.
Yeah. Walking is one of those, I take my dogs for a walk most days, and it's one of those things where if I'm feeling just kind of, just feeling like not great, just need some space or something like that, I always enjoy my walks with the dogs, just some introspective time, quiet time, getting away from the house, stuff like that. So nice.
Have I ever told you about walks that they've equated in the average human, a 30-minute walk in nature, say, is equal to earning $20,000 a year more in the level of happiness it provides?
Huh.
If you do a 30-minute walk every day.
A walk every day.
Yeah, 30-minute walk every day is equal to earning $20,000 more a year in the happiness index.
Huh. Interesting. Well, my understanding is after a certain amount of money, and I think it's around, obviously inflation changes this, but I think it's like around $70,000, and like happiness barely increases if you go beyond that. Like,
right,
your needs are met, so you're pretty much good. So all of the extra money that you earn, granted, I know money can buy some things that can definitely add to happiness, but yeah, I think it's
you mean
interesting.
Like that new Lamborghini I want, you mean?
Yeah.
I'm just joking. I don't want a Lamborghini.
Well, it's interesting because $70,000 is, it's a decent amount of money. But then we have people making millions, and, we have people worth billions of dollars. And it's just like, it's interesting, like what drives that behavior to seek billions when $70,000 is that threshold for happiness,
I agree.
We're going to talk about a bunch of things today. You shared some of your thoughts with me prior, and we're going to dive into things like morality, education, harmony in nature, all kinds of things. So one of the first things I wanted to ask you about or talk about is morality. And an easy one to just knock off the list there is you shared a thought about littering. And I completely resonate with that thought. I've been to national parks and stuff, and you're at a national park and there's not much more frustrating than being at a national park and seeing litter all over. It's like you paid, I don't know, $10, $20 to get into the park just to have access to it. And then you're going to leave trash for, like, I assume people are going to the national parks for the beauty and the nature, like the beautiful scenery that you can go, and then you see trash there. Isn't it the most frustrating thing?
It is. It's a lack of respect. Like, if you think about it, it's so easy not to litter.
Yeah.
There's the occasional thing that blows out of your truck bed, maybe. I don't know. But for the most part, what you see along the roads is actually intentional and disrespect for others and the environment.
Yeah. Yeah, it's frustrating because, yeah, you're disrespecting, obviously, the land. You're disrespecting the people who are going to come after you. And one of those people that might come after you is you yourself, right? Like not most people, but a lot of people like to revisit a place. You find somewhere you enjoy. You're like, I like that. I'm going to go revisit there. Maybe not the following year, but eventually you want to come back. So it doesn't make sense why you'd want to leave the place worse than you got there, and then potentially come back later and have to be around the mess that you created. It's just odd, Right.
I don't know what fuels it, because I've never been one to litter. Like
Yeah.
I guess because I was taught that it was wrong. But when you look at it, even if you're not taught that it's wrong, you know that it's not conducive to your future or others' futures. Unless it's just going to stay there for an undetermined length of time,
Yeah.
somebody's going to have to come along and put effort into cleaning it up. And it looks horrible while it's there.
Yeah. One of the things, and I don't have anything against people who smoke cigarettes. I don't care. I used to smoke cigarettes when I was like 16 to 18, but it seems like the cigarette butt, for some reason, doesn't register for a lot of people as litter. Even though there's plastic in there, it's not something that's going to biodegrade. And it's just always, I don't know. I don't know what it is about smoking cigarettes that little butt that's left over is just seemingly inconsequential to the people that are smoking. Not all smokers do this, of course, but I mean, it's one of the things that you're going to see everywhere, all over the country. Anywhere you see any litter, you're going to find cigarette butts. You know?
Yeah, it's definitely a bad habit for more than one reason. But yes, I don't know that it's carelessness. For some people, it's carelessness.
Yeah.
Or just an absent way of looking at life.
Yeah.
But some people, it's intentional.
Yeah, and I think it's just when you're around something all the time, when you're using something all the time, and you're discarding something all the time, I think you just kind of forget that, like, yeah, this is litter. It's not just a piece of paper. I mean, if somebody threw a little piece of paper outside of a window, I probably wouldn't care that much because I'm like, paper, it's going to biodegrade. It's going to disappear pretty fast. Or, plastic, things that we know don't biodegrade. And those cigarette butts are just plastic, and I'd imagine they're plastic, but I know they're not paper. So,
right.
Where do you think morality comes from? Because you were born into a religious sect of Amish Mennonites.
Right.
Or
Actually,
you weren't born into it, but you were raised early on in life into that religion. Do you feel like the religion gave you your morality, or do you feel like that's something that's more innate?
No, I actually took a hard look when I finally left the religious circle. I kind of tore down all my beliefs because I had to be curious which ones had they instilled in me as values that maybe I didn't even believe in. And we have cognitive dissonance, all of us, some more than others, and I didn't want that. So I took a hard look over several years, tear down all my beliefs and then re-examine them in the light of what I know to be true. And so I would say that my look at morality actually is more from the Socratic, or just say the early philosophers. When I read what they had to say, I don't agree with everything they say, but it did resonate with me. So that's where I would probably get off that train.
Yeah. Do you think people, I mean, even the early philosophers, they had to get the morality from somewhere, right? You can think about things and you can come to conclusions, but like morality, we do something that goes against our own morals, or even morals that we don't have, and we have this like guilt, this feeling of like, yeah, that didn't feel good, didn't sit right with me. Obviously, if something does something to us that hurts us, like that doesn't feel good. So it's really easy to judge other people's morals. But when it comes to our own, it seems like, I was raised Catholic, so I had some religious backing to certain things, certain morality questions. But, there's things that I can do that aren't, teachings of the Catholic Church. I don't feel bad about them. There's certain things that they say, don't do this. And I'm like, I don't really agree with that. And it doesn't bug me, but there are tons of things that they teach where I'm like, I'm just in line with that, even though I don't identify as that religion anymore. So I've always kind of wondered, like, where is this coming from? Is it just, I don't want things done to me that hurt? Or is it more complex than that,
I would argue that it's far more complex than that, simply from the standpoint that so if it came from the religion that you grew up in, then it would be a social construct. You could safely say that, or a religious construct, but socially speaking.
Yeah.
And so we know that morality predates any organized religion that we're aware of. So that'd be my first thing, is say it does predate it. You could say cavemen, if you believe in them, had a social order and rules that they did not cross. That they did have their laws, and laws represent morality to us a lot of times.
Yeah.
But then you could take it, if on the far end of the spectrum, you could say, if it is just a social construct, if it originates with us, the morality thing. So don't kill, you're not supposed to be sexually promiscuous. You're not supposed to lie, all those things we call morality. And we're making these up as we go. So if a civilization makes them up for themselves, it's a social construct and it's what we agree on, or it's a collective consciousness. But that doesn't account for things like Stalin or Hitler, where the whole nation kind of accepted these atrocities were happening. And so if we say that morality is a social construct, that, it's an agreed on collective thing, then Hitler wasn't wrong. We cannot condemn Hitler and we cannot condemn Stalin because their society said it was all right. So if it originates outside of the human mind or the outside of the human consciousness, and it's a law that is an umbrella over everybody, regardless of their societal norms, then that's what makes Hitler wrong and Stalin wrong, regardless of how many people said it was all right.
Is it possible that the morality just changed? So Hitler's in power, Stalin's in power, and the morality changed between the time that they rose to power and the time that they were deposed, or whatever it is, like they were removed from power eventually. Is it possible that social construct just shifted in that time period?
I don't believe in the situation you're talking about with Stalin and Hitler. I would say no, although I would grant that, like in for the slavery issue that has been worldwide since man began, of all nationalities have been enslaved at one time or another. And then at some point, there was enough collective knowledge. We left our ignorance behind on how wrong that was. And so now we see it as a moral issue, whereas back then they didn't see it as a moral issue. So yeah, I'll grant that some of that happens, but I would posit that comes from a place of ignorance turning into knowledge.
Yeah. And I think the fact that I don't remember when Stalin died. Was it in the 70s? Maybe?
I don't know, actually.
I mean, he was in power for a while. So I think it was either in the 60s or 70s. World War II ended 46 or 47, I believe. So the fact that Stalin was in power for another 20 years after Hitler died, then it would tend to suggest that that's not just a change in the social acceptance of the social position of morality, because if it updated in Germany and then didn't update in Russia, that seems to be either like the borders are borders of morality too, or there's something deeper than just a social thing.
Right. And I would also say that Russia and Stalin had pressures from the West, because there for a short time they were our allies, whether that was smart or not. That's what happened. And there was some amount of pressure at that time for Russia to, you had Solzhenitsyn that wrote a book and that got out. And so there were pressures external that we may not see in the big picture right now that would have probably caused Stalin to to stop some of the atrocities, or at least to not feel like he could get away with it.
Yeah.
But if you can't condemn that, my point is, you have a person that says that morality is a social construct, it's a collective agreement, but they can't say that Hitler was in the right.
Yeah.
They want to condemn Hitler, then they have cognitive dissonance. That you both cannot be true.
Yeah. It isn't it pretty interesting, because we have these conversations in politics. Everyone wants to dictate which direction the country goes or the world goes, different countries. And there is a play off of morality for some of these ideologies, like communism and socialism, coming back to Russia. Because the way I see it is, and I've said this before, I don't think on X, but I think among friends years ago, I said, yeah, that's the con of communism, is it promises this utopia that is based on morality, because it's like, we have this morality and it's like, no, we don't want other people to suffer. We want people to be, live more in harmony and not, struggle so much. So that's the appeal of communism or socialism, is it's like, oh, we can create this world that is better for everybody, and there's less just turmoil, and it's going to be better. But as we've seen historically, that never happens. It's just this promise of a utopia. And the problem with utopia is it opens the door for everything. Because once you promise a utopia, it's like, it's just like promising somebody an afterlife of, 40 virgins or whatever it is. It's like, you do this and you are going to have the best possible situation ever. So whatever, yeah, there's some stuff that's going to happen right now that we're going to hurt some people in this life. And, some people aren't going to be happy with the turmoil that happens in the meantime. But where we're going to get is ultimately so great, so wonderful, that the end justifies the means, right? Isn't that quite the paradox? Because you have this hope for morality, but immorality in the meantime, like, to hopefully get to this point of, this, it's not all morality, but it's a more moral, just future, right? So, I don't know. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that little situation.
And there's so much that could be unpacked there. I want to keep it interesting because some of it could be like slogging through historical nonsense. But I'll note that a lot of these people who are for communism are anti-religion. It seems to go together. I don't know exactly why, but organized religion is a threat to communism. But in the early Christian church and other religions, they operate on communistic values, which is, to me, is just like this conundrum. I don't know how to reconcile that, because the early Christian church literally says that they had all things in common. Everybody had what they needed. Nobody was rich. Nobody was poor. They shared everything equally. Well, that's kind of like the basic definition of communism. And so we have these people who don't believe in God, who are threatened by religion, but they're going back to that model, which, I mean, it's just an interesting side note, maybe more than anything. But all in all, for communism to work, it can't be forced. So I think that's the disharmony here. Is true communism can only work when it's not enforced. So if you have to enforce communism, then you have people that are having to enforce it, which means that they rise above the average person, and they are now in a position of power, which goes against the model of communism. So, and what normally happens is you'll have, in China, I think we see it now, you have the red party and the black party. You have to have two parties for communism to work over years. Maybe for the first 6 months, it can look beautiful, but it will, because, and to add to that, you look within yourself and you tell me that you don't make mistakes. Tell me that you aren't drawn to do things that are probably not beneficial for yourself or others. And then I'll say you'll be a good communist leader. Because if you have anything within you that draws you to the wrong thing, if you have a tendency to overeat, or you have a tendency to lie, or you have a tendency to any of those vices, and they put you in power, those those things that you aren't able to control today, you're not well disciplined, will definitely cause you to make a poor leader of the future.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think communism can work on a small scale, and that's the problem. Is, like you said, once you have somebody that has to enforce it, then you have a power discrepancy, and then it's no longer communism. It might be communism, but it's not a
utopia.
Yeah, it's not a utopia. It's something that a lot of people that want communism, I think they see the morality of their position, or what they assume to be the morality of their position. And you see this in politics all the time. People believe that their positions are more moral, that their choice of politician is more moral, whatever it is. And they tend to believe that because their position is more moral, then it is right to have this be the system for everybody. Which is interesting because, yeah, I would say communism works if it's voluntary, but a system where if and it's a question I've asked to people who are more favorable to communism, like, well, half the country or more is against this. So to implement this would mean forcing people that are against your system to adopt your system. So it would require some authoritarianism. Like, there's no way around that. You have to force people. And you might justify that saying, well, it's the better system. Like, sure, maybe it's true. I can give you that. I can give that to you, but it doesn't change the fact that people don't want it, and you have to force them to get rid of their possessions, to accept the system of communism that they just don't want, So it's very interesting that there's that just discrepancy. I want everyone to have this, utopia where everyone exists in harmony, but also, like, you better accept this system of harmony. Otherwise, you're going to see the other end of a barrel of a gun or something, like.
Right. It's like the Babylon Bee did. I think it was a Babylon Bee did the song, the John Lennon's Imagine, except they did the communist version.
I didn't know that.
You have to watch it. It's great. It's on YouTube, but no, there's another thought here that, so you take extreme positions. Let's see if I can get it's sort of off to the side, maybe, of morality or of the politics and of communism. But if we decide what morality is, and that's what morality is, and it's not something external. So in my view, since morality comes from a higher order, and say you don't want to believe in God, maybe it's the structure of the universe that has a preferred position. And maybe that's what it is. If you don't want to believe in God, say, I believe in God, so I believe it comes from God. But say, I definitely believe it's outside of us. Morality could be defined as that which keeps us seeking our best potential, whatever will help us or our neighbors, community, or whatever. You could say any moral position will include that thought. Whereas communism at some point it limits the potential. So true morality seeks to enhance potential, the positive side. Whereas communism at some point or another will definitely put the brakes on and limit potential because it's a threat. So true morality seeks to keep us from self-destructing. So it seeks to take the child and discipline the child who would later become a brat, maybe self-destructive and be on meth or whatever it is, and seek to rein him in so he no longer is subject to his own destructive nature, but he can use that energy he would have used to self-destruct towards goals that are higher, that would help him or others, and he can realize his full potential. And I mean, if you want to get away from biblical morality, you could term it that way.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned that people tend to have a natural tendency to put something as like some kind of higher power. It doesn't necessarily have to be God, but people value money. They put money as their, everyone creates like a hierarchy of importance for different things in their life, right? People who are religious tend to put God as the top. Family is typically something that is near the top for anyone with a family. Loved ones, all kinds of stuff like that. But I have found that it's interesting because I don't think that you need to be religious, and I'm not a particularly religious person, although I do have my spirituality and everything, and I have my belief systems. But I think that when people, it's actually something I'm still trying to wrap my head around, because I don't think people need religion, but I think there is a tendency for people to replace religion or God with things that are more dangerous to have at that level at the highest level of your hierarchy. And politics is one of those things. With communism, and this isn't just limited to communism, but obviously the system of communism is threatened by religious institutions, because that system of communism demands that the highest level of authority is the system. It is the political system of communism. And that's why religion is a threat, because you can't force somebody to answer to the state if they also answer to God, because how can the state compete with God, right? But then even outside of the system of communism demanding this, I think that there is a tendency for people who go atheist or agnostic or whatever to start lifting up other things in their life to replace what they're missing from not having a religion or God. And they start lifting politics and things like that up to it, and start treating it like that, when it's like, these are very subjective realms that we're dealing with. So when you bring up something subjective, although, you can get into discussions around religion with that as well. But when you bring up something that is just your perspective and start treating that as kind of like a religious thing, it's dangerous, because, obviously we've seen it. We've seen atrocities in the past because of those kind of mindsets, but it's also just dangerous to start looking at people differently because of their political beliefs and stuff like that. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Have you noticed that as well?
I have. Actually, I'll add to that.
Yeah.
People don't understand that, and I'll say this, and then I'll try to defend my position. People don't understand the absolute emptiness of having yourself as the highest thing in life. So just consider for a moment, say you look at yourself, Artie, and you are free from all other things, the highest thing in the universe. You are the smartest, you are the best, you are the most powerful. There's nothing above you. There's no goal. You are the goal because you're the highest thing. How could you aim for something lower than yourself? That doesn't even make sense. So that's a hopeless position to take. So at all times, any normal person will find something that's more worthy than themselves, or a worthy goal to aim towards, or something exciting that's above them outside of their own experience to help their experience be more exciting. And you could say that in the case of somebody who's not religious, that's actually a replacement for that something higher than yourself. The religion all is doing is saying, hey, there's something higher than you that you need to conform to.
Yeah.
So if you're without religion, you're looking for something higher than yourself, a goal that's worthy of your devotion, something to learn that will propel you further. You cannot be the highest thing for very long without becoming very depressed. That is psychologically a sound thought. And so you could say that all these other things, whether it's money, and that's a very common one, or if it's sex, which I know people fall into that category. You could say politics, you could say whatever. Yeah. They're all taking the place of God as the highest thing. And that's fine. I'm not faulting that. I'm just making a psychological observation. When you do that, you're literally bending your will to whatever you literally are. In coarse words, you're bowing to it. but you're bending your whole will, your whole time, your whole effort, all your energy in the direction of that thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting because these are all, they're not symbols, but there's no structure around them, right? Like money doesn't have a structure. It's just,
Right.
I want more of it. Sex doesn't have a structure. I just want more of it. Power doesn't have well, I guess there can be structures within power structures, but there's not one set power structure that's the only way to have power. So it's like, I want more power, right? And it just seems like these are cups that can't really be filled. I mean, we see this with billionaires all the time, right? Like, I think I saw a report recently, I think it was Zuckerberg. He's got one of these mega yachts, or I think it was Zuckerberg, but he's got one of these mega yachts, and he was recently being criticized for, like, he hasn't even been on it yet. Like, so he has this, hundreds of millions of dollars yacht that he just hasn't even set foot on, which everyone looks at that and is like, what a waste. And on the one hand, it's like, I don't care what somebody else does with their money. Like, if somebody buys something, if you bought a CD and never listened to it, I wouldn't care. It doesn't affect my life. Like, the only reason this affects anyone's lives is because it's a bigger thing, and it's in the news. That's the only reason people know about it. But it is a waste, and it is just like this status thing that, I want more money, I want more of this. But I mean, most of us look at that and it's like, why? What is this money giving you? Like, I get, like, becoming a billionaire, and you become a billionaire because you have stock in these companies that you built value into. So I understand why people end up billionaires, but it's like, there also seems to be this craving for more and more of something that I don't think you can really get. I don't think you can get more out of money until you get more out of something else in your life, until other things are set, and then the money won't even matter at that point.
And that's the conundrum. And I really appreciate that thought. I personally I feel good for our billionaires in the U.S. Most of them, not all of them, have gotten their money legitimate. They worked hard for it, or whatever. Even though I don't think Bill Gates, I think he's a piece of crap between you and me. I think George Soros is probably borders on evil. However, they worked for what they have. They were smart. They invested wisely. To feel, this urge today, I've seen, on YouTube, where young people and even older people are like, there's no place for billionaire.
Yeah.
Is to have the mentality that it's a win-lose society or a win-lose proposition, when in fact it can be a win-win. Just because Musk is winning, like, has billions of dollars, doesn't mean somebody lost billions of dollars to give it to him. That's not how that works, but that's the attitude they're having. Actually, him building his wealth enriched many, many other people, and nobody had to lose, not unless you wanted to lose. So I'd say that premise is wrong just right off the bat. Now, maybe you could fault Elon or somebody else, which, just to be clear, I really like Elon. I'm a big fan. But if you wanted to find a personal deficit in his life, I'm sure you could find that very easily. I see he tends to like, having children with random women, it seems like to me. But that aside is, if you buy something and never use it, well, somebody had to build that mega yacht, and he's paying somebody to upkeep that. And so there are people who are winning regardless if he's ever set foot in it. Now, I also think it's a big waste. I think that rather than that, why doesn't he start a company that invests in our young people that are extra brilliant? He says, let's have a foundation where if you show that you're extra brilliant, we're going to help fund your projects for the future. That would be, you'd say, oh, that's a worthy thing, rather than this yacht that isn't even being enjoyed.
Yeah. I think something like that would be amazing, because we have hyper intelligent people, and there's kind of there's a paradox when it comes to I don't want to use this word, but I'm gonna usability in society. You're like, if you're hyper intelligent, if you go to the right schools, you get the right connections and stuff like that, you get a great job, you end up in great positions. But if you
Right.
are less privileged and you don't have the access to certain resources or whatever, it doesn't mean you're not smart. You can still be very intelligent, but then your life trajectory tends to be quite different than these people who go to Harvard and Yale and end up in these circles, because you end up graduating from high school, maybe you go to college, but whether you do or don't doesn't really matter. The end result is you end up going into the workforce, and the jobs that you can get aren't interesting, aren't something that are going to keep your interest there. You can start a business, but sometimes resources affect your ability to launch a business of your own, especially if you have big ambitions, because obviously big ambitions usually require more leverage to manifest. But you end up in these careers or jobs that are underserving your abilities, and you can't get into these, CEO level, C level positions. Like, you don't get those opportunities unless you have the connections to start, right? So then you end up just kind of spending your whole life just trying to find that course of action and what you want to do. And it's all a matter of just, you weren't pushed in the right directions, you weren't nurtured, your ideas weren't you weren't mentored. Like, mentorship is a really big one. I've never had mentors, but I've learned from a lot of people, and it is hard. It's hard having ideas but having no way to implement them. And I think that's something that a lot of intelligent people struggle with, because it's like, I have all these ideas, but my energy is spent working 9 to 5 at a job I don't like. All my energy goes toward that, and I get done and it's like, I can do a few other things, but you only have so much energy in a day. There's so many hours in a day, 40 hours a week, which I'm against the 40-hour week in general. I think I don't want to say a scam, but kind of a scam. Like, it's an arbitrary number, right? Like, 40 hours isn't some magic number that makes anything happen. And like, studies have shown that you just fill in whatever work you have, you just make it fill up the time that you're supposed to work for that week. So if you have 20
Yes.
hours of work, you're going to make that last 40 hours. Like, that's how our brains work. So
Right.
yeah,
Well,
I'm all in favor of that.
there might be studies, but I witnessed that firsthand on month after month.
Yeah.
I one point, this is right before COVID, had 24 employees, and they were fabricating railing and gates and spiral stairways. So it was all custom work.
Yeah.
And there were times, especially when COVID hit, when the work sort of took a nosedive, and we had some, but it wasn't like there was a backlog. And I watched, and they didn't even know they were doing it. Some of these were very good people. They would literally take longer to do the exact same project because there wasn't a backlog.
Yeah.
So I watched that in action, and it was a very, at first I wanted to be bitter because it was like, I felt like they were taking advantage of me. But then I saw that they were good people, some of them. And so I had to accept it was something else. And then that's when I stumbled upon that thought that you just gave, that they will fill up the 40 hours with the work they have to do, rather than, and that's a person in general. There's nothing wrong with that necessarily. Maybe it's a lack of self-awareness.
Yeah, it's incentives too, right? Like, the incentive structure. If somebody hires you to work 40 hours a week, you just know that you're there at that job for 40 hours a week. Your incentive is not to get more work done. It's just to get through the work week.
Yes.
I understand that, like, incentives certain industries, you just can't get away from that. Like a server, for example. You have to be there to take the order, to give the customer their food, all kinds of stuff like that. So there's really no escaping the necessity for you to physically be there. But if you have an office job where you're not conducting meetings all day and stuff like that, where you have to be there for that specific time when you're doing something, maybe you're in a factory, you're putting parts together for something. There's no incentive if you're paid hourly to do any more work, but there should be some other incentive structure there to get more done. Like, we shouldn't be looking at it as like, I want to pay you for every hour you work. It's like, no, I want to pay you for the work that you do. So show me what you can do in 40 hours and I'll just pay you that amount to get that amount of work done every week, no matter how many hours it takes you. If you can do it in 2 hours, I'll pay you the 40 hours. It doesn't matter.
That's what we used to do. When we could, we would set a contract rate and based on what we thought they should be able to get done. And then a lot of times they would get really fast at that particular job and they would be making double wage on that.
Yeah.
But I will say, I think what you're saying is you're actually, and I wouldn't say you're raging against the machine, but in a way you are, because the structure that America has set up where you go to school, you start pre-K to get ready for regular school, and then you go to school to get ready for high school, and then you get to high school, get ready for college or for whatever career it is. So like you're always gearing up for the next phase of life. That is a cookie cutter. It literally is. It may not be the same cookie cutter for everybody, but it is going to be the same shape and you will fit inside those four walls if that's what you choose to do. How else could they do the 40-hour week without the incentives that you were talking about? Like, it's designed for that.
Yeah.
And I would say we need to restructure the way we think about our education. And I am so disappointed in an American education system at this point. I can't even, I'd be dripping with disappointment if I could, but I'm not a very expressive person, so I won't drip.
Yeah, I'm very critical of our education system. I think it has failed a lot of people, including myself. I spent most of my childhood out in the hall because I was too hyperactive. They didn't want to deal with me. And I look back on that. I don't have a bunch of resentment. Like, I am who I am. I'm happy with that. But at the same time, I look at it as like, there was a lot of time wasted with me. I mean, they didn't even give me a book. They didn't send me out into the hall with a book like, hey, go read or, improve your mind a bit. It was just go stand in the hall, stare at the wall. And it's like, what is the benefit of doing that? And they don't know how to deal with people. I mean, the education system, I believe it was the Prussian model that it was built on, either Austrian
Probably.
or Prussian. I believe Prussian though. And it was designed to just create obedient soldiers that did what they were told. And that's our education system. I don't even like calling it education.
Right. No, I agree with you, but it's not even meant to educate. It's meant to, okay, let me take that back. Maybe it is meant to educate, but it is meant for the average child. There is no room in there for those with special interests or special ways of looking at life. And there really is no room in there for those who have a different way of learning that some would call special, which I think if they would just have their variety that appeals to them, if you could capture a student's interest and you say, well, they're below average in learning, you might be surprised with how brilliant they actually are.
Yeah.
If you would find a way that appeals to them, make them wonder, make them curious.
Yeah.
And that's what we're lacking, because all we're doing is throwing information to the average person. And we're not even doing that well.
Yeah. When I look at my own, schooling, I didn't have an interest. I had an interest in a lot of things at a young age, but I didn't have an interest in a lot of subjects early on because I didn't understand why they were interesting. And it was later on in life where I'm like, oh, I love science. I'm fascinated by everything science. But there's just so many things that they try to teach you in school, and the way that they're teaching it isn't exciting at all. So you're exposed to this subject. I mean, biology can be extremely interesting or extremely boring depending on how you're taught it. If it's like, here's a cell, just remember these parts of the cell, like this diagram of a cell, and that's your education. It's like, this has no meaning to me. Like, right. I'm just looking at words and a picture that has no meaning. And sure, you might understand a little bit of the meaning around it, a little bit of the purpose of the cell and stuff like that. But history is a big one. I love history. not a subject I cared about in school because I don't care about dates. I mean, it matters to a little bit, right? Like knowing that one thing came before another can be important for sure. But like the specific date that something happened, I said, World War II ended 46 or 47, might be 43. I don't even remember, but it doesn't actually matter. Like it doesn't matter even one bit exactly the year that it ended for the most part. Like granted, there might be certain conversations where a specific date might matter, but it really doesn't. The feeling matters more. I want to know, I'm rambling, but one of the things that taught me that I liked history was a fiction book. It was A Tale of Two Cities. And I'm reading that book and I'm like, they're talking about the French Revolution. Obviously it's a fictional book, but it's capturing the atmosphere of the time very well. And that stuck with me. I was like, oh, I understand this period of history based on a fiction book better than I ever understood it based on sitting in a classroom and being told what was going on, because the book captures the emotion, the energy, the atmosphere, which is what's lacking in this this cold, objective, very dry way of teaching people,
Mm-hmm. Well, try Ivanhoe. Have you ever read Ivanhoe?
Ivanhoe?
Yeah, it's a weird name. Ivanhoe, a side note here, is it's written very much like A Tale of Two Cities, but it's about England when the Normans and Saxons had started to intermingle. And it's a time of King Richard.
Yeah.
It is such a good story, and it will help you visualize what you read in a history book in a whole new way.
Yeah. I think we'd be pretty much in line with education because you said some things that are just like, that's where my heart is with it. Like, I think the purpose of education is to inspire. Like, you inspire people to want to learn, and that's how. I mean, so many people think of education as like you go to school and then you're done learning. I mean, they truly look at education that way. And for myself and so many other people who have been inspired to learn and that are driven to learn outside of that education system, it's really just you were inspired to learn more. Like, that's what drives you. But yeah, that inspiration isn't really nurtured, I don't believe.
Right. I would say if you could put one word to it, curiosity doesn't even quite get it. I would say a sense of wonder.
Yeah.
Because young children often already have that. You just have to tap into that.
Yeah.
And you can find it in teenagers if you look for it, if you know how to tap into it, and it can make all the difference. And I put my mind to making a new curriculum since I was into metalwork for welding school. We had taught a high school here through a government grant. They had asked us to come in as a business and teach their ag class welding and get them certified in stick welding. And at first I rolled my eyes and, it's sort of like this deviation from my normal day. And I knew I can weld ridiculously well, right? And so to me, it looked boring to come in here and take children that may make all kinds of mistakes and they could try my patience. And I have this other job I need to work on. But I agreed to it because I think our schools are important. And it was strangely fulfilling to go in there and to see the wonder. There was a kid or two who dropped out, but for the most part, they all except one did very well. They all graduated and all got certified in stick welding, all positions. And for actually very little funds, it was amazing. And when we got finished, I looked at that and I tried to identify what it was in each of those students that made them succeed, because it almost didn't really take that much effort on my part, except to act interested.
Yeah.
And I say act interested. I was literally interested. But when they saw that I was interested, it seemed to resonate with them in their sense of wonder. As long as we were responding on that level. I'm sure if I would have presented them with something dry, no, you need to do it this way, you're doing it all wrong, it would have produced different results.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying I was a great teacher, but it taught me some. So I said, well, what if somebody could do this curriculum to where you don't just teach the person how to run a welding bead, which is just mundane. You could say woodworking or AC or whatever. But what if you could teach them other skills like teamwork? So you're teaching 12 students. Say one teacher has a group of 12 students, and they could teach them in this trade school that, okay, this is how you do teamwork. And you can incorporate this right into the curriculum while they're learning to weld. You're saying, okay, hey, does anybody need help here? Hey, you learned this. Can you show this other student how to weld?
Yeah.
You could even take that so far as, hey, now it's your turn to teach. You teach management skills that way. So now you've taken it beyond teamwork. Now they're learning how to manage.
Mm-hmm.
They're learning how to keep their work area cleaned up, all these things. So when they graduate in a year, they go out into the workforce and they're valuable because not just because they know how to weld. That's minimal. Anybody can learn that, but that they know how to work well with others and they know how to be a team and they know how to manage if needs be. And all these things, we don't have any trade schools like that, Artie. I mean, I've looked around and I wrote the curriculum and I presented it to my local city, or it's a very small town and less than 2,000 people. Yeah. I said, let's build a trade school here. And they were, very interested. But then the bill for the land and the trade school was going to be, substantial. And so they backed out of it.
Yeah.
But why are we doing the cookie cutter? We're doing it in our public schools. We're doing it in our trade schools. We're doing it in our colleges. Why cookie cutter? Why not go way beyond?
Yeah, there's the natural tendency to just keep doing what we're doing, right? Like that's a human tendency. Like if it's not broke, don't fix it, right? But it is broke. So we're not fixing what's broken because we're just in a habit. We just keep doing what we're doing. And we have all these systems in place. Like with education, I don't know how you feel, but when I hear about the Department of Education being abolished, I kind of feel happy about it because I don't think the Department of Education does anything worthwhile. I think it tries to standardize things, but obviously the standard is not working. It's not a functional standard. It is just a standard. So I don't think the Department of Education, the federal government, does a lot. And in general, I'm for decentralization. And I think that's kind of like the premise of the United States is like, yeah, we're one nation, but we're a decentralized arrangement of states where it's like, all right, most of your obligation is to comply with state law and state systems and stuff like that. And I like the idea of like, hey, you have 50 experiments going on and we're going to see which one is best. And then the one that's best is probably going to be adopted by the states that don't develop as good as systems. You learn from each other. But if you have one Department of Education that kind of dictates what's going on for all of the states, there's not going to be the experimentation. So you live or die based on the one system that is developed. And obviously as we've been discussing, that system sucks. Like it's inadequate.
Right. Well, judge it based on its merits. I mean, I don't know of anybody that's in their right mind that would disagree that the person with the best merits for whatever the position is, like if it's a pilot, they should probably get the position rather than somebody who just was iffy on being a pilot or a surgeon. So then the Department of Education comes in. Let's draw a graph. How well have our public schools succeeded since they were in? Have they gone up? Have they gone down? Have they stayed the same? And if they've gone down, which they have dramatically gone down, then they're not doing their job. They serve no function. And I'd say if I don't see any other measurement than that.
Yeah. Their Department of Education was created in 1979, I believe. And I was looking into this a little bit the other day. They're standardized testing, like to gauge where we are compared to other countries, a little harder prior to the Department of Education. But obviously we're like 13th in like math and science. which isn't that great, like
No.
consider it isn't bad when you consider that there's 200 nations on Earth, but when you realize that half of those nations are, third world countries probably, like,
Yeah.
and then, we are by far the richest country on Earth. So for us to be seventh with all the resources that we have, it's pretty sad. I can give a little leeway for smaller countries like the Netherlands. They have a smaller population to deal with, so they do have an advantage there. It's not as hard to create systems for smaller populations, but still, I think you're right. I think it is provably not going the way that it should be going.
Well, let me make an observation that you can judge a nation by the precision of its language. I think that's a thought that's been handed down through many different philosophers, as Shakespeare even would have said that.
Yeah.
And who doesn't trust Shakespeare,
Yeah.
But when in that dynamic, when we were measured against other countries, we were last of all the ones. I think it's 48 different countries that were, of the main nations that were measured.
Yeah.
We were last. And there may be some reasons for that, but like I'm saying, some people could say, oh, because of this or that or the other, but we have no reason to be last.
Yeah.
You tell me which subject. I mean, math may be more important than reading, but if you can't read, you won't be able to really do math very well.
Yeah.
So reading may be the most fundamental subject that you need to learn of all of them. I don't know. I'm just guessing at this. And if we're not proficient in it, it's a death spiral. We don't want that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think reading is extremely important. I'm sad that that more people aren't interested in reading. I think it's it's a passion of mine. It was a passion of my grandfather's. It's something that I've always been around. And I look at it as like you go and get a book, right? And you're getting something that somebody has not only put their like thoughts into, but they put them in there in a systematic way usually. So like they've taken the time to put their lived experience or their ideas on paper in a systematic way that should be fairly easy to digest to some degree. Not all books are, obviously. But for somebody to take the time to put their thoughts into a book, and you can learn from their experience without having to go and experience everything that they did, live their life of 40, 50, 60 years. I mean, that's a gift. That's a gift that we're given. And it is a shame that more people don't appreciate that gift, because if you go back 100 years, people loved books. People like Dostoevsky. He created books not just by putting out a book, but there were like weekly publications in St. Petersburg, I believe. And I think I'm forgetting which book it is. It might be more than one book, but it was, I'm blanking on the title of it. Demons, I think, that book. That was just put in publication. So people were not only reading it, they were like ready for that next release every single week. It's like, we can't get that now. But people have trouble paying attention to a 90-second reel on Instagram sometimes, So
that's depressing.
Yeah. But yeah, we have shorter attention spans, and I look at reading as just, actually, I didn't read a bunch this morning, but most mornings are like, that's my routine. And I feel like it grounds me. Like, I should meditate more in the morning, but that's something I skip quite often. But reading kind of grounds me because it is kind of like meditation. Like, I have to be there and just, I'm reading for an hour, and I can't be doing anything else. It's why I like physical books, because I can't, if I'm listening to a book, I'm not going to absorb it because I'm going to start doing other things. But if I'm reading, I can't do anything else. I'm here. I'm present,
I am an avid reader, and I think there are reasons for that. It would be a long story for me to go into, but for one, I really enjoy learning, and It's important, though. Yeah, I hear Charlie Kirk, and I'm not the biggest fan of Charlie Kirk. I think he's doing a good thing in his own way. I think he's a little caustic or abrasive, and I'm not sure if he's anyway. I think he's on good moral footing,
Mm-hmm.
but his approach maybe grates on me just a little bit. But he's like, "Oh, I read a book every week." I don't know that has value. Like, if you're forcing yourself to read just for the sake of reading, maybe you get something out of it, or maybe actually you're what if you would wait till you were actually curious or desirous to read, and you did not force yourself to read unless you were really curious about something or really into it?
Yeah.
Then you would look forward to the next time of reading, and each time you would be a sponge because you're very interested. But if you force yourself to read, there would come a point where you'd become callous to what you're reading, and you would just read the words. You would draw out of the script what you expect to draw out of the script.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't care for Charlie Kirk's message of, hey, read a book a week. That's great if you're interested in it, but don't force yourself to do it if you're not.
I made that a goal a few years back. I was like, I read that CEOs read on average a book a week. And I was like, I could do that. I could read a book a week. And it's not like I finish a book every single week. It's that on average, it's about a book a week because I'm reading 4 to 8 books at a time usually. And I do think the goal is nice, but I agree with what you're saying too. Are you familiar with the Suzuki method for teaching instruments at all?
No, I don't think so.
So it actually is based on what you're saying. It started with, the guy's name was Suzuki in Japan, and started with violin. What they would do is and I'm sorry for anyone that knows this better than I do. I'm going to distort it, I'm sure. My understanding is what they do is the parent has to learn how to play a little violin, not like proficiently, but a little bit. And then the child gets exposed to the mother or father playing the violin, and basically the kid doesn't get to play at first. The whole point is that you're getting the kid to want to play the violin. Like, that's what like the first, a few weeks or months is dedicated to. You're just trying to inspire inspiration in the kid. The kid is going to want to play the violin. And that's like the premise of everything going forward, is like, it's about getting the kid to really want to. And then obviously there's more to it following that, but I've always really liked that initial idea of, like, that's how I look at education. That's how I look at reading. Everything is just, you want to inspire the person to learn. So,
well, the question then is, can anything really be great if it's not from inspiration? Though I guess my thought is, if you're reading a book a week just because you want to fulfill a contract you made with yourself, or if you're learning to play an instrument just because you want to be able to play the instrument, or your parents want you to in this case, or whatever it is, does it have even close to the amount of value or potential as if you were inspired, like you just felt it inside of you, just needing to experience this thing? Because when you do that, when you have the inspiration within yourself, you approach it much differently than if you feel like it's a chore. Like, the approach is a 180.
Yeah. I think there's value in pushing children to pick up skills, right? Like,
Sure.
if I wish I would have learned piano when I was younger, because I'm like an okay piano player now. And, I think I'll get better, but I'm not going to be a concert pianist or anything like that. Nor would I want to anyway. But to be that good would be great. I would love to be that good. So I think I would have liked to have been pushed into piano, even if my interest wasn't there. But whether I would have appreciated it. And you see this a lot with people, right? Like, somebody is forced to learn piano or some instrument or whatever, and they don't appreciate it until they like stop doing it for a while. And then they're like, oh, I like doing this. So yeah, there's probably a better way to nurture that a little bit earlier on. But there's also, I think, an advantage to having children explore things while they have all the time in the world too, you know?
Oh, no, I totally agree. I have 5.
Yeah.
And you have to direct their energy into constructive things. Otherwise, it will be aimed at the destructive. I know that for a fact. But at the same time, I've discovered with my older children, my oldest is 20, that many of the things that I showed him skill, I wouldn't say I forced him, but I strongly encouraged him to develop skill in, are not things that he wants to really explore further. He wants something of his own now.
Yeah.
And I feel his pain, but I don't know how to help him further because all I can do is help him from my experience. So now he has to go out and live his own experience. He needs to buy his own piece of property and improve it, or he needs to get into woodworking or some other, something that inspires him beyond what I can inspire him.
Yeah.
And then it will mean something to him inside. It will drive him forward and cause him to go places where he may not go if it was just a chore. I mean, I'm not saying the skill learning is bad. I'm just saying that the inspiration makes a difference.
Well, yeah, I think that's important to recognize too, because I think a lot of people in your same situation might try to force it a little bit more. I mean, I've seen parents do this, like where, a father or mother has taken a certain direction in life. They have certain skills and they believe that their child should have those same skills or that same direction. And yeah, that can cause it can cause problems down the road because that if your child isn't inspired to do that, then they're kind of living someone else's life, and
Right.
It can be problematic for parents too, because depending on the level of narcissism of the parent could get offended by a child choosing a different path, but
Sure.
If you've read Robert Greene, some of his stuff.
I'm sure I have. I can't think of the title right now, but
48 Laws of Power, the Laws of Human Nature, that kind of stuff.
Right.
But he'll talk about, the path that you take of if you are, I think the example he uses is, who's that? Is it Alexander? Alexander the Great. Yeah. So he's talking about Alexander the Great and his father, who I'm blanking on, the king's name, but basically Alexander pushed back on everything his father went, like a lot of turmoil there, but he obviously achieved a lot by going against what his father wanted and carving his own path, And if you choose not to do that, if you try to live in the shadow of your father or whatever, you're always going to feel inferior because you're always going to be comparing yourself to what your father was doing. So the better path is to kind of, you don't have to be a jerk about it, but to push back on that and kind of find your own way, like find your own path. I think it is the better option, but it doesn't sit well with all fathers, all parents,
Well, you and I had a discussion about my past. And I'll bring that up now just a little bit, is when my mom took my brother and I to the cult, and it was out of state and out from where my dad lived. We were living with my dad and she picked us up and took us. And he was very upset by that because in his mind, college is the crown jewel of what a person can achieve. It doesn't matter what you go to college for. As long as you have a degree, you are the cat's meow.
Yeah.
I was 13 when this all was taking place, up to 14. And when my mom loaded us up in the vehicle, he was very upset and he comes out to the vehicle and he says, well, I tell you goodbye because we probably won't ever see each other again because you'll just be dumb hick Mennonite farmers. So get the hell out of here. And it was very like to this day is like, that hurts me to think about that. But then now I'm looking at it and I recognize that he feels that to this day that a person without college is a lesser human being, including myself. I made it all the way to the 8th grade. Now that my struggle and that I learned beyond that, but not formally. I had to do it was a struggle to do it personally. And I feel like I'm a well-informed person that has some knowledge. I don't think college would improve that so much unless I wanted to specialize. And, if I wanted to be a surgeon, sure, I'd learn a lot that I didn't know now. But as far as just general knowledge, I feel like I have a somewhat well-rounded picture. I think all people sort of feel that way, but he still feels like I'm a little bit on the dumb side. Like him and I are not on the same level. And so that ties back to what you just said about narcissistic parents that want their children to conform to a certain thing they think is right.
Yeah.
And that's not a gift for a parent to do. I promise that only hurts your child. If the child would allow it to, it would limit their ability to live life. And it's only by the fortune of people in my life that I was able to break free from that feeling that I was never going to succeed.
You don't have to answer this if it's an inappropriate question to answer, but is your father do you consider your father very intelligent?
I used to. In fact, he did his college time and he became a medical technologist. Mm. And so he's a knowledgeable person. Like he knows all things in a hospital lab. He could go into a hospital lab and tell you anything you want to know about that lab.
Yeah.
But then I look at that and I say, well, that's very specialized.
Yeah.
Very necessary. I am so glad that there are people out there that know how to read blood work and other things that a lab does. And I even picked up on some of what, his jargon and all. But then I would say outside of that, he is so confident in himself. He never pushed himself to learn things that could be considered general knowledge or critical thinking. Why would he push himself to learn those things when he was a smart person?
Yeah.
And so there is some benefit in a person like Socrates says to know that you have a lot to learn, to continually view yourself with that. Say, hey, I might know what I know, but there's a lot that I don't know and I have a lot to learn. And I probably need to modify some of my positions because they may not be hitting the nail on the head. My dad doesn't do that. He feels like he has it figured out.
Yeah, that's interesting because I mean, domain-specific knowledge is definitely valuable and it can be very impressive, but it's not intelligence.
Right.
Unintelligent people can develop highly specialized domain-specific knowledge, which, like you said, very useful. We need people with domain-specific knowledge, otherwise everything kind of falls apart. But it's interesting because I would imagine I know you have an above average IQ. I could say that very confidently that your IQ is well above 100. I think
thank you.
I think you're very intelligent, and I doubt you would call yourself intelligent very often. I doubt you would lead with that. And I think that's a quality of a lot of intelligent people is a lot of intelligent people actually kind of believe themselves inferior in knowledge in a lot of domains because, they understand that they don't know a lot. I know a lot of people I would consider unintelligent or average maybe, who are very confident in what they believe they know, and they believe that their positions are grounded in logic and fact, but it's not. A lot of it is emotion. A lot of it is just taking shortcuts, labels, simplifications. And, I'm constantly I feel inadequate all the time when I look at people, I'm constantly impressed by everyone I see. Everyone has these skill sets and knowledge that I'm man, that'd be so cool. But I know I have a lot of interests, but,
Well, there's so many different types of IQ. That's what a lot of people do not understand. There are so many types of IQ that maybe I have a knowledge IQ, maybe, but I don't have a social IQ to speak of. Mm. And I want one. I recognize I don't have it, and I desperately would like to have it. My brother, who's 13 months younger than I, has ridiculous social IQ. He's one of those people that can read a room within a half a second and know exactly how to present himself, and everybody thinks he is the thing.
Yeah.
And I had to live with that side by side growing up. And he would argue with me. This is funny. I was always the one that had the knowledge, the scientific knowledge. He never was really that interested in science, but we could stand in front of somebody that we knew, and we could argue about the trajectory of, say, a bullet fired out of a rifle.
Mm.
And he would say, no, that bullet goes up. When it's fired, it has rise, is what he called it. And it will go up from a level plane. And I said, no, Thomas, that's not how that goes. You actually have to aim the rifle up from level to get the bullet to go up, because it's going to drop. Gravity acts on it the same as it would act on a rock that's not moving forward.
Yeah.
No. So we have this argument, and the person listening would think that my brother won just because he was so socially intelligent. He could word his things well and intimidate people around him. And so social intelligence is not something to scoff at. That is probably, if I would say, the one intelligence that will get you ahead the fastest in life.
Yeah.
It beats just general knowledge IQ every day of the week. So an intelligent person will recognize the different types of intelligence and say, well, each person has his own field that he's really, good at defining or thinking through. But the other thing is, when you start realizing how much there is that we don't even know, we take a stab at it, like the string theory, we were discussing a while ago, and you can theorize, you can guess, but that doesn't mean you're smart. That just means you're taking stabs in the dark. And a smart person or a wise person should recognize that. Say, well, I'm smart enough to realize that there's things I do not know. I would like to know them, and I'm doing my best to figure them out, but I still don't know them.
Yeah. What? I think certain people are comfortable in novelty, where they're exploring something that they don't understand. I think the average person has curiosity in domains that they're not comfortable with, but I think the average person is more comfortable staying within their domain, and I think everyone is to some degree. Like, we all want to feel competent, and I think if you're always in something new and you never feel grounded in anything, that can be pretty tough. But I think a lot of people want to create a worldview, and once they have that worldview created, they want to preserve that worldview. And you can see this. I think a great place to see this is politics. People often don't update their worldview based on new information. They filter information out that doesn't fit with their worldview, and the priority is preserving that worldview that already exists. So, I agree with you.
It's tough to think about it from this, and you've thought through it on politics. I've thought through it as far as the church or the Christian church or even Islam or any of them are concerned. If you question one thing, say, maybe we weren't right about, and you name it. Yeah. Maybe we weren't right about baptism. Maybe we weren't right about the however many virgins. If you question one thing, then you have to question everything.
Yeah.
You have to, because if you were wrong in one thing, you could be wrong in another. That's not a comfortable spot. That's not a spot that they want to be in. There's a lot of energy that goes into it. And then people might rise up that try to take the authority on the issue. So now they're out of control. So church leaders or whoever, they're out of control, and they don't want to be out of control. Their whole narrative depends on them being able to control the issues at hand. Yeah. So you can't question the first thing, or you have to question the very foundations of what you're built on.
Yeah. And I think the reason I think of politics a little bit is because I think of politics as like each person's individual politics is a factor in this overarching subjective realm that's changing. Whereas religion, you tend to, it's a power structure, and that structure is maintained by the people in the power of whatever church you're dealing with. But you have those structures are very resistant to change. You look at Galileo when, or Copernicus with the heliocentric universe, right? Copernicus was before Galileo, right?
Yeah, there was a few of them in order.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, the system was very threatened by that very specific claim that the Earth actually revolves around the sun. And then you have this system, the church, like, no. That threatens everything that we believe. We would have to, if we admit we're wrong here, and maybe they're not even saying this, but they intuitively kind of know this to be true, that if they allow for this thing to be wrong, then that opens up the door to question everything. And that is a threat to that power structure. So yeah, I would say it's kind of the same thing, because religion is the power structure of the system, whereas politics is the power structure of the person's internal beliefs as far as the politics is concerned. Religion can be the same way, or belief in God can be the same way, but because so many people take their beliefs and at the very least base them off of a religion, they tend to be based off of a system that already exists. But I guess that could be true of politics too.
Right. I guess the reason I'm conflating the two is because I see so much for politics in church life. Like you might not see religion in politics, but you definitely see politics in religion.
Yeah. I think you see both, but you definitely I think politics is everywhere, unfortunately. And I love talking about politics only because it matters, but I hate politics for what it is. It's corruption and power dynamics. And, when I think of like the presidency of the US, like I think it's kind of disgusting to think how important it is and what people would do to get the power, or Congress or whatever, like the lengths that people will go to get in those positions of power and to maintain those positions of power is pretty frightening when you really think about it.
It doesn't matter who we hurt.
What?
It doesn't matter who we hurt, as long as we get there.
Well, yeah, and it's kind of what we were talking about earlier. It's if you have this idea in your head that you have the moral system, that you have the system that is going to make everyone's lives better. If you get back to that, the end justifies the means. Well, yeah, I'm going to cheat in this election. I'm going to rig it to make sure that I get in the power that I need to be, or I'm going to lie to get in this position of power. But you justify it by saying what I'm going to do once I'm in that position of power is going to justify everything I did to get there. And that's the huge problem. And I think, I don't know, do you have that I would imagine you have that in religions too, where somebody believes that they're going to be, the best priest, the best, reverend, whatever it might be. And if they have to, lie a little bit to get in that position or deceive some people, it's okay because I'm going to be good in that position.
Well, and maybe the way I see it even is beyond that, because we all know where we come up short as humans. You know where Artie comes up short. I know where Ryan comes up short.
Yeah.
But we all do it. All humans. There are no perfect people. Hopefully we're all working each day to be better than we were yesterday.
Yeah.
But we still come up short. And you say church leaders who are supposed to be representative of purity, that's sort of the idea anyway. They know where they come short. And so in a way, you almost have to try to downplay your own humanity to be in a position like that. I don't know if that makes sense to you. It's almost in a deceptive way. Now, I've seen church leaders that I respect that do not do that. They say, hey, look, ladies and gentlemen, I am a human. This is my tendency, and I'm sorry for that. They're upfront about their weaknesses.
Yeah.
But you see many, many more who pretend like they have perfect lives and they are pure and they would never do whatever. And then next thing you know, well, you see it on the news that this person did that or what, or I had a Baptist preacher over here tell me, which, I mean, it's just the way it is. He brought some parts for me to do. And so I was going to price them. And right before I priced the parts, he looked at me and says, all right, just remember that the Lord will take care of you if you take care of Brother Jerry. And like, whoa. Now I wanted to price him like double because like that really irritated. For some reason, it just really irritated me. Like you're claiming the power of God as his mouthpiece, right? And yet you're acting so human. I just be upfront. Hey, can you get this real cheap for me? Then I'd respect you.
Yeah.
You know?
It's an insane position in a certain sense. Like it's to be religious. I mean, I guess it depends on the religion, of course, but to believe in the Christian God and to believe like, yeah, God's going to take care of you if you take care of me. It's like,
yeah,
it's not the way that the Christian God is typically believed to be. But yeah, people do that all the time. I mean, I see people. I'm in Utah, so I'm around Mormons, and I love the Mormons. I think they're good people in general. But there's also this. I know you get this on other religions too, but Sunday is like who's the better dresser, who wears the best suit, who's going to put on the best face for God. Like I don't, I do believe in God. I don't believe God cares what you're wearing. I don't think that at all. I'm sure maybe God cares about I hope this person, wants to serve me well by at least trying to present themselves well, as a child of God or whatever. But yeah, it's a contest to see who can wear the best suit, who can dress the best, who can be the most devout, who's there every minute. And I'm sure you get this in every religion where it's like it stops being about God and it starts being about your ego as a member of that church.
Right. And then you're just playing games and you're unhappy doing it. So why not play a game you enjoy?
Yeah.
Like dress up isn't one that most people, well, some people enjoy it, but I'm just saying like, if you're going to see who has the best shoes and who's dressed the best and who drives the newest vehicle or whatever it is, that seems like a little bit time consuming and resource consuming. Why not just play on the PlayStation or something? Isn't that more economical if you're going to play games?
Yeah. Well, and it's also one of those, I mean, any philosophy that talks about self-improvement or anything you're going to end up on the fact that you should not be comparing yourself to others because it's a losing battle. You should be comparing yourself to yourself and trying to improve upon yourself and comparing yourself to others. Like, yeah, there's always somebody that's better than you at something. Maybe you can become the best at something. Mike Tyson for a little bit could say he was the best boxer in the world. Eventually he wasn't though. At some point, somebody's going to be better than you at everything.
Right. Well, and I would argue even beyond that, say Mike Tyson could be the best boxer, but there was probably dozens of unknown young men that if they would have been given the opportunity, they may have been able to take him on.
Yeah, that's true.
Even though in the competitive world he was the best, there was probably still other individuals that would have been better than him in some way or another, been able to take him down. And so I look at it that in my perspective, or even Elon Musk, I'm sure he thinks about that. So when you talk about humility about IQ, it's not necessarily because I know that I don't know everything, or Elon, whatever, he knows that he doesn't know everything. He has to surround himself with smart people too.
Yeah.
But it's also to know that there are young people out there that given the chance could probably eclipse you or me or Elon but they don't have the chance.
Yeah. There is one exception to somebody being the best at something, and that's Michael Jordan. He was the best basketball player in the world. There's probably not a single human that could beat him, and there probably never will be.
I don't know. I'll agree with you, but that's just because I don't know who to fill in the blank with.
I was a big Jordan fan when I was younger. But yeah, with IQ and Elon Musk, the thought just came to me. I know because he's gotten in politics, he's considered divisive now. As soon as somebody gets into politics, they're considered divisive, even though it's not that they're necessarily divisive, but the narratives that start getting created around them are. I find it funny. One of the criticisms, Trump too. Trump gets this criticism, but Elon Musk, I don't know who's smarter between those two, but I find it funny because one of the attacks I hear about Elon Musk now is that he's not that smart. He just hires smart people and all this stuff. Like he doesn't create these companies. He just buys them. And I've never had Elon Musk take an IQ test, or I don't know of him taking an IQ test, but I would be, my jaw would drop if I found out that he had an IQ of 100 or less. Like, the guy obviously has an above average IQ. I don't know if it's 120. I don't know if it's 160 or 170. I don't know what it is, but I know he's clearly above average intelligence. And I find these attacks, these critiques of him interesting because mostly they're probably coming from people who are objectively less intelligent than him, but they are very comfortable speculating that his intelligence is nowhere near as high as people think it is, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you've caught me here because you already know that I'm an Elon Musk fan, and not in a weird way. I see his weaknesses very well. In fact, I wonder why he's getting involved with so many women. I mentioned this earlier, and having so many kids with so many women. It just seems counterproductive from a stability, family, community orientation, and morals and too. But I mean, that's his choice. And then, I think some of the things he says are intended to be incendiary, and I can't see how that fits with what he is trying to accomplish. So I agree. He definitely has, if you just watch him, if you watch any intelligent person with a high IQ in the areas that, say, Elon has, or you take Nikola Tesla, or you take Einstein, they're going to be a little awkward with the way, or different anyway, with the way they word their sentences, with the way they emphasize certain things, maybe their facial expressions. And you can see that he's so specialized in knowledge in the way his mind works that he's not harmonious or fluent in the social. His movements are a little bit less graceful. You could say he's doing Nazi salutes all over the place. Just joking. That was obviously not a Nazi salute, but that's funny. I mean, I can appreciate the humor there. It's fun to pick on people. And it would be a dream of mine to be able to collaborate with him. I'm a nobody. I know that. Yeah. But he does appreciate genius when he sees it, and he'll handpick it himself to work at SpaceX or work at Tesla because he says, oh, this person has, a lot of potential and he wants to take advantage. That's also a sign of a smart person. Yeah. You think a lower intelligence person would do that? Absolutely not. They want to be top dog.
Yeah.
They want to prove to themselves they are the top dog. So
yeah,
they can't put anybody else first.
Yeah, I think it takes intelligence to recognize intelligence, usually. I don't think, I mean, to some degree. I think you can be unintelligent and, well, actually, I'm going to take that back because I think if you are less intelligent, I think it might be easier to convince you somebody is intelligent based on what words they use and stuff like that. But people can, they can talk without saying anything. You see, like academic babble, people who they'll use a bunch of words because they're familiar with the words and maybe they're not even using them in the right context and stuff like that. Nah. But they'll use big words intentionally to try to make themselves appear smarter than they are, or maybe they are smart and they just want people to know that. But somebody who maybe isn't as articulate, somebody who isn't as educated, they might fall for that and say, oh, this person's really smart. But then when you peel back the layers, you're like, they're not really. So maybe you can trick people into thinking you're smarter than you are, depending on what their ability is. But in general, I think an above average intelligence person is going to recognize intelligence in another person or lack thereof. And Yeah, I've never listened to, well, this is one thing. Elon Musk is willing to dive into some territories that he's maybe not that intelligent and like it's not his specialty or anything. I mean, he seems like maybe a generalist, but probably not. He's like kind of got an engineer's mind. But yeah, I've never listened to a conversation with him where I'm like, oh, this guy's dumb. Like,
Yeah,
I mean, you can debate how intelligent he is, but I don't know. I think it's just it's interesting because people want to call him unintelligent. Same thing with Trump. Like, Trump definitely acts less intelligent. Like he's not as articulate in his public persona, but my understanding is that is not how he actually is. Like Bill Maher actually came out recently saying the Trump that we see on TV is not the Trump, not real Trump. Like he's quite different in private settings. And I've heard that a lot. Greg Gilo, who you might have interacted with on X, he said he's met Trump and he watched Trump speak before he was in politics, and the words that he was using a lot of big words and stuff like that. So it's hard to believe that somebody could be, below average intelligence and rise to the level of being a billionaire and becoming president of the United States. Not that it's impossible. I do think billionaires, I don't think all billionaires are just insanely intelligent people. Some people know how to work the system, get subsidies and stuff. Even Elon Musk, he got things subsidized and stuff like that. But, you have to use the system. I mean, if the system is there, take advantage of it, I guess, right? Somebody else is going to if you don't. But I do find these critiques funny when it's like, it's based on their intelligence. I see Congress members where I'm like, oh, that person is dumb. I'll admit that. I feel that way about some people. But I'm also, I feel like I'm not as naive to think that like anyone I disagree with is dumb. Like it's just the easiest way to dismiss somebody's opinions. Oh, this person's just dumb, right? I don't need to listen to them.
No, I agree with you totally. I think it's easy, and especially in the politics and in the religion, you can make that argument like from a minister or a leader, a politician can try to make somebody look unintelligent on purpose in order to shore up their own position.
Yeah.
And I think that's a common weapon they use.
Yeah.
So things are not always obvious, and you shouldn't take things at face value. I actually came across when I was a teenager as being a little below average IQ. In fact, at one point I was 17 or 16 and I asked my sister, for whatever reason, I felt like I was really retarded. And I said, am I in real life? Am I retarded? And everybody knows it, but they treat me nice because they don't want to make me feel bad. And I'm the only one who doesn't know it. And because I actually felt like I must have some disability, mental disability. And this was serious to me. Like I was had the lump in my throat. It took a lot of courage to ask it. You know what she told me? She said, "Don't be stupid." Okay. I didn't really get an answer, right? But I realized since that it wasn't because I was unintelligent. It was because I was different or specialized in my field of IQ.
Yeah. I think that self-reflection is usually a sign of intelligence, but like people who are intelligent doubt their own intelligence because I think there's a lot of reasons for this, but one of the things is if you're average, if you're just whatever average, which there's nothing wrong with being average. I don't think there's anything wrong with being below average. Below average people can excel at different things. It's about knowing your limitations and knowing what your potential is. And even like I find people who are maybe considered less intelligent, but I find them remarkable because of their maybe domain specific knowledge or what they're able to do with what they have. Like I find people quite remarkable who are just, you're talking to somebody and you're like, oh, this person's never really shown like much intelligence or anything. And then all of a sudden they start talking about something and you're like, wow, I can't believe how much you know about this. Like, that's so impressive. That's so cool. So, well, yeah.
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
Add to that just a little bit.
Yeah.
And, I like Mark Twain. And he had this whole story. And at the end, it was one of his last short stories called A Mysterious Stranger. And at the end, the boys met an angel, towards in the story, they were dealing with an angel. And the angel was like, well, just ask whatever you want. What should I do for the priest of the village? And everybody liked the priest in the village. He was just a pure guy, but he was in jail for something he was wrongly accused of. And the boy says, well, just make him happy forever. Whatever it takes, just make him a happy person. And so they get to the jail cell to release him because he's been cleared of all wrongdoing. And he's just stark raving nuts, just prancing around the jail cell. And he believes he's the king of the country, and he's bestowing favors on all his jailers and the people. And he's obviously not in touch with reality at all. And the boys said, they asked the angel, said, what did you do? And he goes, well, I made him happy. And they said, I don't understand. That's not what we meant. He said, and then the angel's like frustrated with the boys. He said, I've observed humans. And he said, there's no true happiness if you're in touch with reality. In fact, the smarter the person, the less happy they'll be. The only truly happy people are the ones that are not in touch with reality. And I find that a refreshing look. So if you notice when you meet handicapped people, even not all of them in wheelchairs, not all of them mental disabilities, but they're often the most refreshing people to be around. They look at life simply and they're happy with what they have.
Yeah.
And it can't be said for most wealthy or rich people. Intelligent people.
Yeah. Yeah. I do think that there is I think you can be an intelligent person and be happy for sure. But I do think there's a disconnect. If you're intelligent, there's a disconnect. Like you see a lot of potential and you understand that there's a discrepancy between what could be and what is. I think most people see that discrepancy, and obviously your level of intelligence can influence how big that disconnect is, because you can see a lot of potential if you're intelligent. But
it's the futility.
Yeah.
The futility that gets intelligent people.
Yeah. But yeah, I think, what you're touching on is simplicity. And not that everyone in a wheelchair is, unintelligent or anything like that. Obviously, people can be in wheelchairs for mobility issues and things like that might not affect their brain. But I do notice, like, you see these stories all the time of somebody losing some ability. Maybe they lose a limb. They were a surfer and they lost their leg, and they can never surf again. And like surfing gave them so much pleasure, and they lose their leg and they learn to find like other things in life to be happy about. And I think of music production actually when I think of this, because there's something called, like, I don't even know what it's called actually, but people will start collecting VST instruments and plugins and stuff like that, and they'll create this library of plugins. They never get used or anything like that. And one of the best ways to create music when you get to that point is strip it down and use very simple tools. Like you're like, I'm going to use these 5 tools and I'm going to act like I don't have anything else. And you start, like, it actually makes you more creative because you're not sitting there and thinking about all the different possibilities of all these plugins that you can be using. And I think it's similar with people who like lose some ability or end up in a wheelchair or something like that. They start to appreciate what they do have because they have less,
Right. And to clarify, that's when I said people that are handicapped, like in wheelchairs, I wasn't thinking about a mental disability. I was thinking about the limitations they experience cause them to value what they do have. It seems in a lot of cases, I can't remember his name. He's a part of the spaces a lot of times on your spaces, that he suffers with breathing.
He passed away about 2 weeks ago.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, really sad.
I'm sorry for that.
Josh Busby, yeah.
He was always upbeat. He always tried to see the best in whatever was being said and just be positive.
Yeah.
And I've seen so many people with so much more ability than he had as far as movement or health.
Yeah.
That take it all for granted and they're negative. And so, like, it's just such a contrast that shouldn't be.
Yeah.
The people that are suffering from hardship should be the ones that are sarcastic or dark. And most of the time they're not. And,
Yeah.
you say, well, what am I missing?
Yeah, he had such a positive outlook on life, which, I mean, if there's anyone who had a reason to not be positive, it was him. Like, he's stuck in a wheelchair. He has to be helped with a lot of basic functions of life. Toward the end, he had to be helped with a lot of basic functions of life. But yeah, he always had such a positive attitude, and he was genuinely like happy anytime something like happened positive for other people. We get on spaces, and he would. I'm not the best at self promotion. He would just be promoting the podcast. He would like be doing all the work that I should be doing, and I'm like, it's amazing, man. I really appreciate it. But yeah, he's an amazing person.
Yeah. I'm sorry he passed. Like, I don't know how close you were, but for everybody that knew him and loved him, I am sorry.
Yeah, I had the chance to interview him once. We did that. I wanted to interview him again, and we were supposed to meet up. He was trying to see a doctor in Las Vegas, and my parents live in Las Vegas, and I think he was looking at like June. And I was like, yeah, it was our last conversation. He was like, yeah, I'm thinking about going to Vegas to see a doctor, just trying to get everything arranged. I'm like, yeah, let me know. I'll gladly go down there and meet up with you. A chance to visit my parents and see you, of course. And then, then he passed away. So yeah, it's one of those things where you always have that, like the last time I talked to him was like a month and a half or a month or so before he died. And it's like, man, how did I let that much time pass by before I talked to him again? And there's always that, it's you're never ready for someone to be gone, to leave the earth. And it's like, you always have those regrets of like, man, I wanted to have a chance to talk with him about this. Or what if I would have been reaching out more, could I have helped him or whatever it might be. So, yeah.
But the funny thing is with what you're just saying, and I see it as the human irony, is he was probably, he needed support, right? But in a way, he supported everyone else more in a funny way. It was almost like perfectly able people were looking to him for support.
Yeah. When
he was the one that was disabled in whatever ways he was. And yet he was so upbeat, people looked to him for positivity. And it should have been the other way around, right? Like, he had every right to say this isn't fair, and he didn't. So,
yeah.
But anyway, I know we're coming up on our time. I feel like we haven't even discussed some of these juicy thoughts here.
Yeah, we're going to have more conversations, I believe, because I'm not a fan of like trying to force it, like I don't want to try to force too much in a small amount of time. So if it takes us 2 hours to talk about a few of these topics and there's more left over, I'm always open to having more conversations down the road, because why not? Like it.
Right. I don't mind rapid fire either.
Yeah. I've always enjoyed conversations with you. You're a very open person, which obviously I love. You have so many different things that you like talking about. So I'm all about generalists, and I love talking to specialists too, because obviously you can pull so much information out of them, but your life experience is so cool. Your outlook on life is so cool. Your humility is admirable. Like, you just have so many cool qualities. So
I claim none of them, even though I aspire to all of them.
Yeah.
But can we pick the one you like the best out of here and catch it before we jump off?
Yeah.
Or do you not have time for that?
Yeah. There's one I want to jump into, and we can go over 2 hours. I'm happy to. I do have something I have to jump off for in a little while, but harmony in nature and balance. I want to dive into that about a little bit. So maybe you can relay your thoughts on this, and then we can dive into a little bit.
So yeah, I have to start where I started to make it make sense. But I am terrified of wasps. I have very few things in life that I'm intimidated by. People don't intimidate me. Dogs don't intimidate me. I guess it's because I don't have that social understanding of situations. So I'm oblivious to the need to be intimidated. But these little wasps will make me scream like a little girl if they go close to me. I'll jump off a 2-story building to get away from them. And people, my brother especially, would just rib me to no end about this. It just doesn't make sense. Now, I'm not a little guy, so, this just looked a little incongruous, I guess. And so, but I noticed in my journey, and I'm allergic to them, so that might explain some of that. And we have yellow jackets, and we have red wasps, and we have hornets, and we have ground wasps. So there's a lot of different varieties that I have to stay clear of. And but I noticed that people who, like my brother and my dad, who were not scared of these things, could walk right close to one of these active nests. And if they were disturbed, they would fly around my brother or my dad to come to me and like threaten me. And my dad and my brother would be like, no, you're imagining. Finally, my dad saw it in action, and he's like, well, you're right. That doesn't make sense. So, the common thing is that wasps sense pheromones, and that's how they decide who they're going to attack and who's a threat and all that, And I said, that just can't be. Sometimes they're upwind, downwind, they act the same. And I know they do smell carbon dioxide. That's how they know where your mouth and eyes are when they attack you. That's why they attack you up at your face. So I'm standing under the tree on the phone one day, and I look over, and right beside me is a very large wasp nest, a red wasp nest, and the wind was blowing. It's Texas, and the wind was swaying the tree significantly, and that branch was, swaying back and forth, and the wasps weren't scared. And I thought, that's amazing. I got off the phone. I'm just watching this. They were not threatened at all. So I took the branch at where it joined the tree, and I tried to reproduce that same thing and sway that branch. And they immediately, and I mean, I was doing it carefully. I don't want to disturb them too much. I don't want to get stung. And they immediately were threatened, and they came flying around. And I thought, there is something wrong with this. And then I said, well, some people, dogs go after some people. Dogs don't go after me ever. But wasps will. So what is the deal? So I started realizing, and this is my theory, is nature is set up on a series of equations. So the wind blowing is part of the equation. The sun shining is part of the equation. The weather, the humidity, the barometric pressure, all of those things play into this equation that animals sense, and they know what the right sums are as the equation plays out. They know if it's the breeze or if it's me swaying the branch somehow. I don't know. And I said, well, that means that there's a harmony, basically, because it's as a human. So if you say you're decent with the piano, you've heard pieces being played that you don't know the next note, right? You just hear somebody playing it. You think, that's really nice. Say they would hit a wrong note. Would you know it? And the answer is yes. It doesn't sound right. And just like, and actually music can be boiled down to mathematical equations. And, you have 2 plus this times this equals this. And it's just repeating over and over different equations with different sums. So when you get a wrong sum, then you say a wrong note. It does not harmonize with the rest of the equations. And I'd say nature is much the same, whereas we discount animals' brains. This chicken has a pea brain, ostrich, they have a tiny little brain. And yet they're somehow able to sense this equation and make sense of it time after time and know when their environment is threatening or not threatening. Maybe pheromones play into the equation, or maybe they don't at all. I don't know. I'm not saying that they're discounted entirely, but I say, so nature produces a harmony. We know that nature, so whether you believe in general theory of relativity, the special theory of relativity, or string theory, it doesn't really matter. Nature has a preferred stance. Anything out of balance with that stance is going to be policed instantly. Now, that's what lightning is. It's an imbalance in the negative charge and the positive charge between the clouds and the ground. And so lightning forms to balance the difference, basically. So if there's a little difference, probably no lightning. But if there's a great difference, there'll have to be lightning to catch the balance. That's nature policing the difference, the imbalance. And so we call that harmony. And I believe you see that throughout the universe. You see it down to the smallest molecule. Everything is vibrating in harmony. And so when a person is not in harmony with nature, and I believe you find this in more highly intelligent people, or let's not even say intelligent, specialized people, that they don't act in harmony with their surroundings for whatever reason. I don't tend to have smooth body movements. Like I don't dance well. I promise you do not want to see it. You will be scarred for life. And I suggest that wasp, dogs, other animals, they all sense that balance that a person has with, so your mental posture affects your body posture. I mean, intimately. So if you're feeling discouraged, you're going to be slumped. You're not going to walk straight up. If you're feeling confident, you're going to walk with your shoulders back, right? So like your mindset infinitely is connected with your body stance. And I believe animals see that. Wasp, dogs, fish, whatever. I don't know about fish, but the animals we interact with every day notice those things. So try to sneak up on a dog sometime. They immediately put their ears up. They know you're sneaking up on them if they notice you. Whereas if you just walk calmly up to them, they wouldn't act like anything's going on. So they notice your posture. And my suggestion is when people or nature is out of harmony, so an earthquake and you have in Yellowstone and you have bison running and deer acting funny, it's because the harmony has been thrown off in nature and they know it and they're scared, they're threatened. Anyway, and this goes into string theory and it goes into some other things, but.
Yeah. Obviously the animals, they're not doing these calculations consciously, right? So
Right.
That's an abstraction from what you're observing. It is interesting. I'm thinking of like different scenarios in my life. When I read what you wrote, I was thinking of this too. Like one thing that just popped into my head is my dogs. I can get them to react based on this. So like I have my hand. Why is my camera doing that? I have tracking off and I swear it'll just turn tracking on. So anyway, I have my hand. This gets no reaction from my dogs. If I do this, no reaction. But if I go like this, oh, they start growling and like they start getting worked up about it. So yeah, there's this energy. I think of it a little bit more like energy, like we give off an energy. Sure. With the wasp, I actually wonder, I'd imagine your breathing is different than your father's or your brother when you're around wasps, right? Because breathing is a big part of life, and like a calm person is going to be breathing. Like I feel like you can calm yourself down by focusing on your breathing usually, like just breathe, So I wonder, have you tried that with wasps, like just focusing on your breathing and seeing if, it's kind of a not an ideal experiment state because you're dealing with something that can harm you.
Well, no, that's perfectly legitimate. And when I said that they don't consciously know, it's just like you don't consciously follow a music piece and know that they hit a wrong note. You just know it without doing figures in your head.
Yeah.
You know it's wrong. How do you know it's wrong? I don't know, but you know it's wrong.
Yeah.
And the animals know. So when I walk by a wasp nest and I'm unaware of it, they don't fly out.
Yeah.
They do not fly out. They are not threatened. But when I am aware of it, they know I'm there. So like and it goes back to this, maybe it's like Schrodinger's cat, where once you observe the cat, its outcome changes.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're familiar with that whole thought experiment. They say when they try to measure a boson or a particle in physics, they measure it, it reacts differently than if it's unobserved.
Yeah.
So in a way, you would say that particle is observing you back in sort of a figurative way. If it reacts differently, that means that it observed you back. How else could it be change its trajectory? If it's unaware, then its trajectory never changes. It has to have a level of awareness to change its trajectory because it was observed. So my thought is, since I observed the wasp, I now have produced a series of cascading equations that make me act differently than I would have normally, which makes them react and act differently or threatened.
Yeah.
And dogs are the same. So if you're scared of dogs, they sense it. They know you're scared of them. And A nice dog might not react badly, but most dogs will find that exciting and they'll react to your reaction.
Yeah. I love dogs, but I was at Holly's dad's house a while back, and his fiance had a dog there. It was a boxer. I love boxers. I think they're adorable dogs. It was a puppy, which it's still a fairly big dog, and it bit me. It like not hard, but it was going to bite me harder. For some reason, I did something that I went upstairs. So we all went downstairs. I came upstairs, and I think the dog was just like a little freaked out. Like, you just went downstairs with my human or the person that's taking care of me, and then you come back up here by yourself. What'd you do with him? I just imagining the thoughts that could be going through its head. Anyway, the dog was acting fairly aggressively to me, and I was on edge, and I was like, I was backing up, but I was also ready to like attack it back if it attacked me, to protect myself. And I've thought about that a lot since. I'm like, man, what was it that I did with that dog that it perceived me as a threat, and I couldn't do like a calming voice, like in the state that I was in. I was already freaked out. I'm like, oh, this dog's a threat to me now. I couldn't soothe the dog. I couldn't calm it down or anything like that. I just had to leave the situation and then kind of like, there were 6 other people in the house. No one else had a problem with that dog. And I'm usually the one that will get along with the dogs better than most of the people, better than your average person. But for some reason, this specific dog, I couldn't. There was a block there, and I feel like it was something like that, where it's just something I just did something where it just didn't like it. And I also think of when I was a little kid, we would have banana spiders in between. Like, we had these hedge bushes, and we would see banana spiders pop up every year. And I would try to, and I've done this many times, but I would try to mimic. It reminded me of the branch thing that you did with trying to sway the branch with the wasps. I would try to mimic a fly or a bug getting stuck in the wasp nest. So I'd like take a little twig and I'd touch the wasp nest, and I'd like kind of start shaking it like a little thing would do that's caught in there. I could never get the wasps to interact with it. Like, they never treated it as a potential, food item or insect that got stuck in there. I could never do it. And I think it has something to do with that. There's something in them that just, they understand there's something that even we watch these interactions. We watch the wind with a branch, and we think I can mimic that movement, but there's something that we just can't get right. Something we don't register in the equation that the wasps do. So yeah, I think that's really cool.
Well, and I think we underestimate, in my own opinion. So the reigning theory has been pheromones. They sense pheromones. And I'm not discounting them entirely. Probably they're part of the equation.
Yeah.
But there are times when they could not possibly sense your pheromones. You're in a position where the wind is blowing from them to you. They couldn't smell you.
Yeah.
But more than that, you say, if a person can instantly recognize a note out of harmony on a piano or on a guitar or on any musical instrument, even if they're not skilled in any type of music, but they can hear it. And you could boil that down to a very complicated mathematical equation. And you say, well, how did you do that math so fast? Well, I didn't. It just came to me. Why are we discounting the animal's instinct, which is even stronger than our learned intelligence?
Yeah.
Instinct is the strongest of all forces in humans and animals alike.
Yeah.
So why are we discounting their ability to instinctually know?
Yeah. And yeah, music is learned. Like the scales that we learn, those aren't, I don't think they're innate, because there are different cultures that have different scales for music.
Yeah.
But yeah, if someone hears a song, they don't have to be trained in music. They can usually hear that, oh, that note doesn't sound right. That one sounds different. And it's it just doesn't fit with the pattern that's being played or whatever. So yeah, it's really interesting. I guess we're gonna have to ask Schrodinger's cat to move over for Ryan's wasp.
Yeah. Well, it actually works very well with my theory. And his thing was just he was trying to prove how ridiculous some of this is. Like, he wasn't actually proposing it as a theory that should be, put on a pedestal. Somehow it got there. But if you observe, and once again, if you observe a proton or a neutron or a boson or whatever boson, and it reacts to, and we're talking about particles that have no brain,
Yeah.
they're just natural particles. And yet they react differently when they're observed or measured than they would when they're not observed or measured. There is some level of awareness there on a level we don't understand, where they're observing us back.
Yeah.
How much more would it be for an animal with a brain that has actual instinctual awareness?
Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting. There is definitely a harmony in nature. Although nature it can be messy, of course, right? Like, I think people romanticize nature a little bit. Like, they're like, everything is so, harmonious. And it's like, a cheetah chasing a gazelle. Like, the end result is not too harmonious, at least not for the gazelle, So
that's funny.
Like, there's definitely destruction in nature, but yeah, there seems to be some kind of energy or some kind of, like you said, equation that is playing out that is just interesting to watch. And we can't quite replicate it with things that we on the surface look to be the same. Like, you moving that branch, I'm sure you were watching it for a while and you watch the movements and you're like, I think I can move it pretty much exactly like that. And you try to do it exactly. And it's like, no, it just doesn't work. Just like with the spiders.
I'm terrified of wasps, so I was going to do everything in my power not to make them threatened.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the last thing I wanted.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, I do wonder about, like, if they're sensing the oxygen or the carbon dioxide that gets released from us, maybe breathing has something to do with it. Like, if you're breathing a little harder and, like, they pop out and they see this cloud of carbon dioxide from you versus somebody who's breathing calmly, maybe that has something to do with it. But it doesn't change the fact with the branch and a lot of other things. So that's a really interesting thought.
Right. And I'd just say there's a lot of other things, but that generally states my theory. And as far as I know, that's original. I haven't come across a theory like that. I asked Grok about it, and in just the easy Grok, he disagreed with me strongly. He said, I strongly disagree. Pheromones have been proven to be this. So I went into the deep think Grok.
Yeah.
And he actually agreed with me. He said, yeah, it's actually supported in literature that wasp and other flying insects live by vibrations.
Yeah.
Even like in a honeybee hive, the honeybee will find flowers that have pollen that they need. And they'll come back to the hive and they'll do certain vibrations to inform the rest of the hive where those flowers are located. So it's movement, and they're sensing that. And so Grok was like, oh, yeah, that's very possible. So the two different forms of Grok were even against each other.
Well, it's funny how AI is like that, because oftentimes it's one of the dangers with just the information aspect of AI is people, if they're not inquisitive enough, if they're not assertive enough with AI or inquisitive enough where they're pushing back on things, they might get an answer and just believe that to be the answer. But I know you've experienced this too. Like, sometimes when you push back on AI, on Grok or ChatGPT, whatever you're using, the answer is quite different than they originally said, or their understanding of the problem is not up to par with where your brain is at. Like, you're presenting something and they say, no, that's not true. And it's like, well, what about this? And it's like, oh, I get what you're saying now. Yeah, that's plausible, and it happens all the time. Do you just use Grok or do you use ChatGPT too?
I used to use ChatGPT, but I found Grok to be a little more neutral. I did not care for it felt like ChatGPT was a little rigged, if you know what I'm saying. not
Yeah.
like desperately, anyway, but Grok does seem to be less, biased.
Yeah.
And, but I actually, I broke Grok, which I broke him. I'm just using a funny word. At one point I shut him down on my iPad. I was asking him, and I didn't even mean to. I wanted to see how intelligent he was, or what his limitations were. This was about 4 or 5 months ago.
Yeah.
And so I asked him about evolution versus creation. And he said, no, evolution is what happened. And I said, how do you know? Isn't it called the theory of evolution? He goes, well, yeah, you're technically right. But, and by the end, he actually, when he would just say something went wrong. And then I'd ask him another, and something went wrong. And he just, so AIs are very dependent on input that they can reason through.
Yeah. Yeah, very much. Well, Ryan, it's been awesome talking to you. Let's plan on having you back if you're down with it here in the next few weeks. I always love having conversations with you. So
this is fun, Artie. I really enjoy it. I find very few people that enjoy heavy conversations, and it's something that I would say would be my pastime if I could make it my pastime. Just, I don't know why, but we have so many unexplored avenues, and I would really like to be on again.
Do you get that where, like, in social settings, like small groups of people, one-on-one conversations, do you find that you run into people who are often not willing or interested in going down as deep than you?
This is something I thought through for a long time. So see if I can put it in the right words. My interests are very, very philosophical and very aware. Like, I like to be aware of everything. I can predict normally when a driver is going to turn. I'm driving behind somebody, and I can predict when they're going to turn right or left and how many miles, roughly speaking. And my family's like, how do you do that? And I'm not always right, but I'm normally right. And it's because of a level of awareness. It takes a lot of energy, but that's just how I'm built.
Yeah.
Once again, it may be at the cost of social energy. And so I go to have conversations with people, and they literally do not enjoy having conversations with me normally, like just average people on an average day. And so I've learned I've had to talk about the weather or what color their truck is, or something that I am absolutely not interested in, but that way I can do my part of the social contract.
Yeah.
And so, yes, in answer to your question, most people do not enjoy talking about these subjects. And so it's kind of like a dessert to find somebody who's like-minded on most things.
Awesome. Yeah. I've had the same problem in my life. It's like, I want to have these conversations, and sometimes at odd hours of the day and night, I have a tendency I'll get these bursts of energy late at night. Holly has to deal with this all the time, where she's like asleep. She's been watching TV. She may be watching TV to like turn her brain off at night, 11 o'clock at night. She falls asleep at 11:30, and I'm down here in the studio, and I'm on something that I'm just in, and I go upstairs at 1 a.m, and I'm like, sometimes I could be a little bit rude. I'm like, I want to talk right now. And yeah, she's really good about keeping up with a lot of conversations with me, but she'll also point out when I'm being, I can information dump a little bit. Like, it's like, oh, like somebody seems a little open to a conversation, and then it's like, oh yeah, I've been wanting to talk about this, and just a bunch of stuff it's like, oh, that's a lot. So
I totally feel your pain there. And you don't realize you're doing it when you do it. You're not trying to be, a jerk.
Yeah.
You're just very interested in it yourself. And then you fail to see how the other person is not interested, or maybe they're another thought going on in their head.
Yeah.
Do you have, just a question, do you think like in several threads at a time?
Yeah. It's a really big problem with conversations. My friend Brian and I, when we have conversations too, I sense that a lot with him, because we'll be talking about something, and it's like, it'll trigger like 5 or 6 thoughts, right? it's like you can't explore. I mean, you can only talk about one thing at a specific time. So it can kind of make conversations a little bit probably harder to follow at times because you're jumping from one thing to another, which can be a little frustrating. Like it works for me, but for people listening, it might not always be the most ideal situation. But yeah, it can be hard. Like even in this conversation, like there were many things that it's like thoughts that came to mind that I didn't share because it's, you know, like we're talking, right? It's like
Right.
you have to kind of settle on something that you're going to say and go with it. And then sometimes that moment passes where it's like, it doesn't make sense to go back to this again. Although I do that all the time where I'm like, I want to mention this, but yeah, I quite often it's a big,
Right. But maybe the multiple threads, I mean, you actually are simultaneously thinking about what you're talking about and something sort of like a computer has something running in the background simultaneously together. And I'm not saying I do that well, but sometimes there'll be like 3 separate lines of reasoning on 3 separate topics going on all at the same time. And they distract from each other. I don't know that I could do a deep dive with that going on, but I find it frustrating because sometimes you don't know which one to follow, but then when you follow one, you forget what the other one was.
Yeah, exactly. It's, yeah, because like I said, you have to commit, like you have to say something, right? So once you start saying something, it's like you're kind of at, I look at it as like you're at this point, right? Like you're talking about something and there's like 5 or 6 things going on, right? And it's like you have all these directions, but as soon as you take one direction, you can go back to the other ones, but as distance happens, it's like it stops making sense to go back to some of them at some point. So yeah, it can be fun, but frustrating.
Yeah, just curious about all that. Just I've run it. I would say you have the architect personality type on the 16 personalities.
Okay,
would be my guess. Have you ever done that?
I have, but I don't remember. I'm a mediator is one, right? I
think so. Yes.
Well, the Myers-Briggs, you can test at different things at different times depending on your mood, where it's not quite as consistent as like Big Five. But I think I've gotten the mediator, if I'm not mistaken. Architect, I'm INTP, I think.
I'm INTJ, and it's accounts for 1% of the population.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why I run into so few people that I resonate with.
Yeah.
I might like them, but it's like our conversations are not optimal.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I find that, I mean, the reason that I'm doing the podcast is because I don't have this outlet in my personal life. You know, I have people in my life I can have good conversations with, but not to say I don't go through my periods. Like the last few weeks were one of those periods where I'm like, man, my motivation, even with the podcast, is kind of dwindling right now. But it's like, peaks and valleys, right? But the whole point of the podcast was, I want to talk to people about a bunch of different things, and I don't have that outlet in my personal life. And I mean, I've been ridiculed by people. Like I have a few friends that game and stuff, and one of them is my good friend Kobe, and he's always down for deep conversations. Well, most of the other people that game and stuff like that I'm friends with, they can talk about things, but then, it has to be kind of on their terms. They get annoyed if it's subject matter, if it's politics, if they start tuning out, or they, they'll kind of mock me like, oh, Artie's going down a rabbit hole again. It's like, yeah, I mean,
feel your pain there.
Yeah. So it's, it's just something you have to deal with and find your people. So this is kind of like my way of finding my people. It's not like every conversation is somebody that I'm going to have a friendship with or anything like that. But I've made a lot of friends from the podcast, you being one of them. Like I really enjoy it. I really enjoy the people that I've been able to meet and I develop relationships with and have amazing conversations with. So,
well, I appreciate your effort, Artie, because even if it I don't know what your goal is, but say you don't quite reach your goal, but you've made a lot of people, you've given them opportunities that they wouldn't have had otherwise. And that is something to be appreciated. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you. I don't even know what my goal is anymore. It's just the podcast is the goal, I guess. The experience is the goal at this point. So I've kind of given up on. I wanted to run it as a business before, and it is technically a business, but it's not a big money maker by any means. So it's like I plan on making my money elsewhere, and then this is going to be an intellectual and curiosity outlet for me going forward. And I think that takes a little bit of the pressure off of it, because if you're trying to make a business out of it, it's like, I can niche down and make this into something that is more commercially appealing. And I've had that conversation with a potential mentor a few weeks ago, but I'm like, I would stop. Like, if I niche down and I talk about one thing, this will last another few months and I'll get bored and I won't be doing it anymore. So I'd rather do something that's maybe less appealing to big crowds, but it gives me what I want, and hopefully some people enjoy it too. So,
and just remember, eventually somebody will listen to it, and that person will have connections. They'll be interested. They'll share the connection. Yeah. And so I would say, if you just keep on for how long you can, you'll eventually run into that connection that really makes a difference.
Yeah, I agree. But yeah, Ryan, it's been amazing talking to you. Before we end the chat, why don't you tell listeners where they can find you, and then anything else you feel like sharing?
Well, I do have a presence on YouTube, but I really haven't maintained it very well. But that YouTube channel is A Fresh Angle, and I'm on X. I guess those are the two places where I'm present. I'm always welcome people to follow me, and I'll follow them back. I love to have conversations. Even if I don't agree, maybe I can modify my position or even change my position.
Yeah.
I think that we all need each other. And I think especially people with different opinions need each other to balance each other out. So I look forward to anybody that wants to have a good conversation.
What's your handle on X again?
Ooh, that's a good question. I can look real quick.
I feel like it's Ryan C. Proctor, but I'm not sure.
I believe you. Yeah, it's Ryan or RC Proctor 81.
Okay, cool. RC Proctor 81. Yeah. So anyone listening, give Ryan a follow.
Yeah. And by the way, congratulations on your 40th year, Artie.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's been kind of interesting. We've been watching some movies lately, and I see these actors, and I'm like, how old is this actor in this movie? I'm like, man, I feel like for my age, I look so much younger than other people who are 40, but
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. You do have that young appearance.
Yeah, but yeah, thank you very much. But we'll plan something here probably within the next 2 months. I'll have something scheduled with you for another conversation. All right?
I would love that. Let's explore some really interesting topics.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan.
Take care.